Hello everyone. Welcome to UPSC Explainer 101. Today, we'll explore Livelihoods, Economies and Societies from Class 9 NCERT History Chapter 4. Let's dive in. Discuss the significance of communities like forest dwellers, pastoralists, and shifting cultivators in the context of the modern world. Answer: historical relevance. These communities have been integral to civilizations for centuries, often predating modern urban settlements. Ecological importance. They play a pivotal role in maintaining ecological balance, preserving biodiversity, and providing essential environmental services. Cultural significance. Rich traditions, customs, and practices of these communities contribute to the cultural diversity of a region. Economic value. Their knowledge and practices, especially in sustainable resource utilization, have potential economic value if integrated properly into modern systems. How did the 19th century growth of industries impact forest societies, and what role did colonialism play in this change? Answer: increased demand. Industrial growth led to a surge in demand for forest products, from timber to herbs. Colonial control. Colonizers sought to gain control over these resources, leading to the establishment of forest departments and implementation of strict forest laws. Classification and mapping. Forest areas were mapped, and trees were systematically classified, leading to the creation of reserved forests and plantations. Local displacement. The local communities, once free to use forest resources, faced restrictions and were often displaced from their ancestral lands. Elaborate on the challenges faced by pastoralists due to forest controls and agricultural expansion. Answer: restricted movements. The creation of reserved forests limited the movement of pastoral communities, impacting their traditional grazing routes. Loss of grazing fields. Expansion of agricultural activities meant less open space for grazing, putting pressure on available resources. Conflicts. The reduced availability of resources led to conflicts with farmers, other pastoral groups, and forest officials. Cultural impact. Many rituals, customs, and practices of these communities, which were closely linked with their pastoral nature, started getting eroded due to these challenges. Why did deforestation become more systematic under colonial rule, and what were its implications? Answer: commercial interests. The colonial rulers promoted commercial crops, which required clearing forests to make way for plantations. Perception of forests. Forests were often viewed as unproductive and were cleared to make space for what was seen as productive agriculture. Infrastructure development. The building of railways, roads, and other infrastructures further contributed to deforestation. Ecological consequences. Systematic deforestation led to ecological imbalances, loss of biodiversity, and change in local climatic conditions. It also impacted the livelihoods of communities dependent on forests. Examine the role of forest laws and policies in shaping the livelihoods of indigenous communities during the colonial era. Answer: introduction of formal laws. Before the colonial era, forest usage was based on traditional customs. With the advent of colonial rule, formal laws were introduced, governing forest access and use. Commercial exploitation. Forest laws were primarily designed to cater to the commercial interests of the colonial powers, leading to extensive logging for timber and other resources. Reduction in traditional rights. Indigenous communities saw a decline in their traditional rights to access and use forest resources. Many practices like hunting, gathering, and shifting cultivation were restricted. Economic impact. With reduced access to forests, the economic well-being of indigenous communities was adversely affected, pushing many into poverty or forcing them to adopt new livelihoods. Analyze the ecological consequences of shifting cultivation and how colonial authorities perceived this practice. Answer: nature of shifting cultivation. This involves clearing a part of the forest, cultivating it for a few years, and then moving on, allowing the cleared patch to regenerate. Ecological benefits. When practiced sustainably, it can prevent soil exhaustion, maintain soil fertility, and aid in the natural regeneration of forests. Colonial perception. Colonial authorities viewed shifting cultivation as a primitive and destructive practice. They believed it caused deforestation and was not as productive as permanent agriculture. Consequences of curbing. Efforts to curb shifting cultivation without providing viable alternatives led to livelihood challenges for communities and sometimes even degraded the land due to unsuitable agricultural practices. Discuss the socio-economic impact of the expansion of railways on forest communities during the 19th century. Answer. Increased accessibility. The expansion of railways made remote forest areas more accessible, facilitating the movement of goods and people. Exploitation of resources. Railways enabled large-scale logging, leading to significant deforestation and exploitation of forest resources. Change in livelihoods. Many forest communities were employed in the construction of railways, altering their traditional ways of life. Cultural displacement. As areas became more connected, there was an influx of non-forest communities, leading to cultural shifts and sometimes conflicts with indigenous populations. Highlight the significance of traditional knowledge of forest dwellers in the context of sustainable forest management. Answer. Deep understanding. Forest dwellers have a profound understanding of local ecosystems, developed over generations. Sustainable practices. Their practices, like controlled burning or selective harvesting, often ensure the long-term health of the forest. Biodiversity conservation. Traditional knowledge can provide insights into conserving local flora and fauna, some of which might be unknown to modern science. Modern integration. Integrating traditional knowledge with modern forest management techniques can lead to more holistic and sustainable conservation strategies. Prelims MCQs. Which colonial power first introduced formal forest laws in India? A. British. B. Portuguese. C. French. D. Dutch. Answer. A. British. Which tree was primarily logged for railway sleepers during the 19th century? A. Teak. B. Sal. C. Pine. D. Oak. Answer. A. Teak. During which period was the practice of shifting cultivation at its peak in India? A. Early 18th century. B. Late 18th century. C. Early 19th century. D. Late 19th century. Answer. C. Early 19th century. Which indigenous community was primarily affected by the restrictions on hunting during the colonial era? A. Bhils. B. Santhals. C. Gonds. D. Todas. Answer. A. Bhils. Which forest policy emphasized the economic value of forests rather than their ecological significance? A. Forest Policy of 1855. B. Forest Policy of 1894. C. Forest Policy of 1927. D. Forest Policy of 1952. Answer. B. Forest Policy of 1894. Which region in India saw the most extensive logging for commercial purposes during the colonial era? A. Western Ghats. B. Eastern Himalayas. C. Central Plateau. D. Sundarbans. Answer. B. Eastern Himalayas. Which forest product was a major export during the 19th century? A. Medicinal plants. B. Timber. C. Resins. D. Fruits. Answer. B. Timber. What was the primary purpose of demarcating reserved forests during the colonial era? A. Wildlife conservation. B. Indigenous community welfare. C. Commercial exploitation. D. Recreational purposes. Answer. C. Commercial exploitation. What is the term used to describe the cultivation technique of clearing forest patches, burning them, and then cultivating on that land until the fertility decreases? A. Commercial farming. B. Terrace farming. C. Shifting cultivation. D. Permanent agriculture. Answer. C. Shifting cultivation. Which term refers to forests that were earmarked for commercial cultivation during the colonial era? A. Reserved forests. B. Village forests. C. Sacred groves. D. National parks. Answer. A. Reserved forests. What is the practice of hunting, gathering, and fishing for sustenance? A. Shifting cultivation. B. Farming. C. Hunter-gathering. D. Aquaculture. Answer. C. Hunter-gathering. Which term refers to the act of protecting certain regions to maintain the ecological balance by prohibiting hunting and logging? A. Deforestation. B. Afforestation. C. Conservation. D. Exploitation. Answer. C. Conservation. Which term describes the process of clearing large tracts of forests for various purposes like agriculture, housing, or industrial projects? A. Reforestation. B. Afforestation. C. Deforestation. D. Conservation. Answer C. Deforestation. What is the term used to describe the process of planting trees on barren lands to create a forest? A. Reforestation. B. Afforestation. C. Deforestation. D. Conservation. Answer B. Afforestation. In which Indian forest did the British primarily log trees for railway sleepers during the 19th century? A. Kaziranga Forest. B. Satpura Forest. C. Sundarbans. D. Sal Forests of Chota Nagpur. Answer D. Sal Forests of Chota Nagpur. Which colonial officer played a significant role in shaping the forest policies in India during the 19th century? A. Robert Clive. B. Lord Dalhousie. C. Sir Dietrich Brandis. D. Lord Curzon. Answer C. Sir Dietrich Brandis. Which forest in India was primarily exploited for its rich teak wood during the colonial period? A. Forests of Assam. B. Forests of Kerala. C. Sal forests of Bihar. D. Pine forests of Himachal. Answer B. Forests of Kerala. In which region did the colonial administration primarily target the practice of shifting cultivation? A. Western Ghats. B. Eastern Himalayas. C. Northeastern Hills. D. Coastal Plains. Answer C. Northeastern Hills. Which forest officer initiated the systematic classification of forests in India during the British Raj? A. Jim Corbett. B. Gifford Pinchot. C. Sir Dietrich Brandis. D. John Locke. Answer C. Sir Dietrich Brandis. Which primary motive influenced the British colonial administration's forest policies in India? A. Ensuring local community welfare. B. Biodiversity conservation. C. Economic exploitation for colonial profits. D. Encouraging agricultural expansion. Answer C. Economic exploitation for colonial profits. What would have been the most likely consequence if indigenous communities had unrestricted access to forests during the British Raj? A. Reduced biodiversity due to overhunting. B. Enhancement of traditional forest conservation methods. C. Increased deforestation due to commercial exploitation. D. Rapid urbanization of forest areas. Answer B. Enhancement of traditional forest conservation methods. Which factor was a significant driver behind the British interest in regulating India's forests? A. The demand for timber for railway construction. B. The need to control local rebellions. C. The push for wildlife conservation. D. Interest in promoting ecotourism. Answer A. The demand for timber for railway construction. How did the British colonial forest policies impact the livelihood of indigenous communities? A. Enhanced their agricultural practices. B. Provided new commercial opportunities. C. Disrupted their traditional ways of life. D. Encouraged urban migration. Answer C. Disrupted their traditional ways of life. Which outcome can be primarily attributed to the commercial exploitation of forests during the colonial era? A. Increase in forest cover due to systematic afforestation. B. Degradation of biodiversity and loss of endemic species. C. Improvement in the livelihoods of indigenous communities. D. Expansion of wildlife sanctuaries. Answer B. Degradation of biodiversity and loss of endemic species. Based on the British forest policies, which reason can be inferred for the decline in the practice of shifting cultivation? A. The practice was not economically viable. B. Indigenous communities voluntarily gave up the practice. C. The colonial administration perceived it as destructive and wasteful. D. Shifting cultivation led to disputes among local communities. Answer C. The colonial administration perceived it as destructive and wasteful. Thanks for watching.